We are just starting Unit 7, and in Lesson 7.1, we're going to be multiplying mixed numbers. You're going to need to start with your whiteboard marker before we get into our journal for today. So let's start with the first problem. Going back to adding fractions, we've been doing a lot with multiplying and dividing, but we don't want to forget when we add and subtract, we need denominators that are the same. So for example, if I'm adding 1/2 plus 1/4, my denominators are different. So I'm going to change 1/2 to fourths. If I multiply the denominator times 2 to get fourths, then I have to multiply the numerator. When I add or subtract fractions, my denominator must be the same. 1 times 2 is 2. In other words, 2/4 is the same as 1/2. So now I can add the numerators. 2/4 plus 1/4 is 3/4. Why do I not add the denominators? Well, if I look at a picture of fourths, this shows 2/4. This one shows 1/4. If I add those together and combine those, I can take this fourth and put it here. Now we have 3/4. We didn't come up with eighths, it's still in fourths. So would you try number 2 on your own? Go ahead and pause the video, and on your whiteboard, complete 2/3 plus 1/4. 2/3 plus 1/4 does not have the same denominator, so I'm going to change them both to 12ths. How did I know 12ths? I just multiplied 3 times 4 to get 12. So if I multiply by 4 in the bottom, I multiply by 4 in the numerator. 8/12 is the same as 2/3. 4 times 3 is 12, so I multiply the numerator times 3. 3/12 is the same as 1/4. Now I can add 8/12 plus 3/12 to give me 11/12. Let's try one that has 3 fractions. I notice they all have different denominators, but if I figure out the first number they have in common by writing out their multiples, the first number they have in common is 12ths. Go ahead and change each one to 12ths and then add. Pause your video so you have time to complete it. I'm going to change each one of these to 12ths. Obviously 1/12 is already 12ths. So I'm going to multiply the denominator times 4 and the numerator times 4. 4/12 is the same as 1/3. Change 3/4 to 12. I multiply by 3 in the bottom, so I multiply by 3 in the top. 9/12 is the same as 3/4. 1/12 is already the same, or has the same denominator, so I take 9 plus 1 is 10 plus 4 is 14. 14/12 is the same as 1 and 2/12. All right, take a look at the bottom problem. It says, talk with a partner about how area model shown above represents the problem 28 times 6. Do you remember when we did this partitioning of rectangles? And what I would do is take 20 times 6, which would be 120, and 8 times 6, which would be 48. I add those two together, and that gives me the product of 168. How could I use that same area model if I were multiplying a mixed number like 4 2/3 times 7? Why don't you go ahead and set it up on your whiteboard? We can use this same area model as we used with whole numbers. All we have to do is take 7 times 4, which is 28. Take 2/3 times 7. Remember, write that denominator as a 1. 14/3. What's another way to say 14/3? How many 3's are there in 14? Well, there's 4 of them. And 4 times 3 is 12 with a remainder of 2. We'll write that as a fraction, 2/3. So 14/3 is the same as 4 and 2/3. Now I just have to combine them to get an answer of 32 and 2/3. let's use that same process as we move. Let's do one more actually on our whiteboards. So we're going to take 1 3/4 times 2 1/3. Again, I'm going to divide the mixed numbers into a whole number plus a fraction on each of those. So set that up. And now what we will do is we'll go ahead and multiply. 1 times 2 is 2. And let's take 3/4 times 2. Remember, in order to write that as a fraction, you can just write it over 1, which would be 6/4. Now, we'll multiply the 1 times 1/3. 1/3, 1 times 1/3, remember, write that over 1 is 1/3. And 3/4 times 1/3 is 3/12. Now I know that I just practiced adding 3 fractions in my warm-up. I'm going to take these 3 fractions and say, what can I change the denominator to so I can add them all up? I can change each one to 12ths. So let's change this to 12ths. 4 times 3 is 12, so 6 times 3 is 18. 3/12, I don't have to change. 1/3, change it to 12ths. Multiply the bottom by 4, multiply the top by 4, 4/12. I have 18 plus 3 plus 4. 18 plus 3 is 21. 21 plus 4 is 25/12. And then don't forget about the whole number 2. Now we don't want to leave that as an improper fraction. So I would say how many 12s go into 25? Goes in there twice, which is 24 and 1/12. So let's add the 2 and the whole number 2 to get 4 and 1/12. Let's go ahead and practice this in our math journal. So if you would open up your math journal to lesson 7-1, this is page 233. And at the top, it says multiplying mixed numbers. Use the rectangle to make an area model. Label the sides. Find and list the partial products. Label the partial products in the area model. Add the partial products to find your answer. You may need to rename fractions with a common denominator. So let's take 3 1/8. Let's divide that rectangle into 3 times 1/8. And the other number is just a whole number, so I don't have to divide that anymore. Now let's go ahead and take 3 times 4, which is 12. And then let's take 1/8 times 4. Remember, I can write that over 1. 4/8. Now all I have to do is add those two together. 12 plus 4/8 is 12 4/8. Another way to say that would be 12 1/2. Number 2, 2 3/5 times 1/4. Let's take and divide that rectangle into 2 equal parts. Let's take 2 3/5 times 1/4. First thing we'll take over here is 2 times 1/4. Remember, we can make that into fraction by just writing it over 1. So 2 times 1/4 is 2/4. Now we take 3/5 times 1/4. 3 times 1 is 3, and 5 times 4 is 20. 3/20. Now, those denominators are not the same, so we cannot add them together yet. We're going to add 2/4 plus 3/20, but I'm going to change fourths to 20ths so they have the same denominator. 4 times 5 is 20. So I take 2 times 5, which is 10. Now I can take 10/20 plus 3/20 to get 13/20. So we just have a lot of steps. We know how to find common denominators. We know how to multiply fractions. And now we're just combining those two skills together. Let's look at number 3. Now here we need to divide this into 2 sections going across. So we have to take 4 1/6 across the top and then divide it the other way 2 ways as well, 1 2/3. Let's go ahead and multiply. 4 times 1 is 4. And 1/6 times 1, remember I can write that over 1, 1/6. Now we'll take 4 times 2/3. Remember, just write that over 1, 8/3. And lastly, 1/6 times 2/3. Multiply straight across. 1 times 2 is 2. 6 times 3 is 18. Make sure you're writing all of this down. 2/18. Now I have to add all of those together. 1/6. Write this down with me. Plus 8/3 plus 2/18. Go ahead and write that down. I'll be looking for this when you take a picture. So I can change each one of those to 18ths. So write 18ths next to 6 1/3. Multiply the bottom by 3. Multiply the top by 3. So 3/18 is the same as 1/6. 3 times 6 gives me 18. Multiply the top by 6. And I get 48 18ths and 2/18. I don't need to change. So now all I have to do is add these together. 48 plus 2 gives me 50. Plus 3 more is 53/18. My, oh my, do we have a lot going on in this problem. Don't forget, we still have to add this 4 over here. But I have to find out how many 18s are in 53. Would you write that down? How many 8s go into 53? How about if I try 3 times? 8 times 3 is 24. 3 times 1 is 3. Times 2 is 5. Oh, that's too many, so I know it goes in there twice. 18 doubled. 18 plus 18, or 18 times 2 is 36. Go ahead and subtract. With the remainder of 17/18. Now, I take the 2 that's here plus the 4 over here to get 6, and then my remainder was 17/18.